This tape is presented as an instructional aid to the understanding and maintenance of pitot systems. The Barfield Test Set Technical Manual provides a complete explanation of procedures and should be referenced to avoid any simple errors or omissions that may be found in this tape. The student is advised that there are many regulations and documents published concerning the legal and practical aspects of component certification. Every effort has been made to follow those guidelines while producing this tape. However, Barfield assumes no responsibility for omissions from this instructional aid. Before reviewing this tape, the student should have an understanding of these FARs: 43.9, 43.11, 91.36, 91.171, 91.172, and 91.177, and these advisory circulars. 43-2B, 43-203B, 43-6A, 43.13-1A, 43 Appendix E and F, and TSO-C10B as a minimum of exposure to this system and its operation. The Barfield Instrument Corporation 1811 Series Pitot Test Set is designed to provide a source of pressure and vacuum for use and maintenance of aircraft pitot and static systems. The test set performs leak tests on the pitot and static systems and also tests the operation and calibration of vacuum or low-pressure units such as the airspeed indicator, altimeter, rate of climb indicator, engine pressure ratio gauge, and manifold pressure indicator. This program will review the basic operating principles of a pitot system, discuss using the Barfield 1811 series test set, and describe techniques for instrument testing. The basic pitot system consists of two systems linked together. The pitot system, which supplies ram air pressure to the airspeed diaphragm, and the static system, which supplies outside ambient pressure to the vertical speed indicator, altimeter, and airspeed indicator. When pressure is applied to the pitot system, the airspeed indicator shows an increase in indicated airspeed. Pressure on the pitot system has very little effect on the static system instruments. But when vacuum is applied to the static system, the indicated speed shows an apparent increase. Let's take a closer look at the instruments themselves to examine how the pitot system interacts with the static system. The basic static system includes the vertical speed indicator and the altimeter. The altimeter senses barometric pressure and reports that pressure as altitude in feet to the pilot. This drawing of an altimeter shows the sealed diaphragm inside. The diaphragm changes shape in response to the changing outside pressure. For example, when the outside pressure decreases, as occurs when altitude increases, the diaphragm expands until it and the internal case pressure equalize with outside static pressure. As the diaphragm changes shape, its movement is transferred to a gear train assembly, which drives the indicator hands read by the pilot. The entire mechanism is encased in a sealed housing, allowing the outside pressure to be controlled via the static line. The vertical speed indicator shows the pilot a rate of change in barometric pressure as equated to altitude. Inside the indicator, a diaphragm is connected to the case port. The port is also vented inside the case via a metered restrictor. When the static pressure changes, the diaphragm pressure changes more rapidly than the case pressure. This imbalance causes the diaphragm to momentarily increase or decrease in size based on the case pressure. The restrictor slows equalization of the pressures, causing the diaphragm movement to indicate a rate of change. For example, when the aircraft is in a climb, the air pressure outside the diaphragm is greater than inside because the air pressure cannot equalize through the restrictor as fast as through the unmetered opening in the diaphragm. The diaphragm contracts, moving the gear train and showing a climb on the vertical speed indicator. When the airplane levels off, The pressures equalize across the diaphragm and the case. With the pressures equalized, the diaphragm is at rest. When the airplane changes altitude, the time it takes for the diaphragm to sense and display a pressure change can be as much as 7 seconds. During this time, the pilot may see erroneous readings, commonly referred to as lag. The instantaneous vertical speed indicator contains a device to counteract lag. As the airplane begins to climb or descend, a gravity-sensitive pressure device, accelerator pump, causes an artificial pressure difference across the case and diaphragm. This instantaneous movement provides an immediate reaction to the diaphragm, which overcomes the lag normally present in standard climb indicators. The last component in the static system is the airspeed. The airspeed's diaphragm is ported to the outside via the pitot port. The pitot port supplies pressure to expand the diaphragm, causing a reading on the indicator face. The airspeed is enclosed in a sealed case, which is ported to the static system. Pressure inside the case acts on the outside of the diaphragm. When pressure is reduced on the case, increase in altitude, the diaphragm expands until its pressure equalizes with the case pressure. The diaphragm is controlled by both the pitot and static systems. The airspeed indicator then is a differential pressure device, expanding when the pitot system pressurizes the inside of the diaphragm and when the static system pressure decreases on the outside of the diaphragm. We have discussed the basic components and their principles of operation. However, it is important to realize that they are not the only units in this system. Before testing your aircraft, it is important for you to identify and locate all of the devices plumbed into the pitot static system. Your maintenance manual will be the best source to identify and locate the components on your aircraft. Some of the more common components of the pitot static system are airspeed, altimeter, vertical speed, airspeed switch, altitude reporting sensors, air data computer, flight data recorders, Mach sensors, cabin differential pressure indicators, and some that may not be readily obvious, such as autopilot components, undercarriage warning sensors, and fuel management devices. Now we'll show you some of the adapters that allow you to connect the pitot static test set to the aircraft. Most pitot heads will allow you to install a slip-fit device like this over the end of the tube. Make certain that all other openings on the head, such as vents or drains, are sealed. The static port is usually a hole in the side of the aircraft. Keep in mind the static system might have 2 ports, one on each side of the airplane. There may also be a drain at the low point in the system or an alternate source located in the cockpit. In some installations, you must cover the port with a tape-on or suction cup device to provide sealing. However, some aircraft have sufficient-sized ports to allow specialized self-sealing adapters to be utilized, thus ensuring a leak-proof seal. Some airplane installations have pitot and static ports located on the same head. For these aircraft, use a special adapter to make test connections to both systems. Most pitot static testers have normal aircraft instruments to provide a quick reference to changes in the system. These instruments also provide valuable indications for troubleshooting and calibration. The control valves in the test set provide for precise, positive control at any point of testing. They are high-quality devices. However, their serviceability is greatly affected by over-tightening and abuse. The valves close on contact with their seat, and any attempt to tighten them past hand tight will damage the valve. The white lines on the front panel of the tester show the plumbing diagram. The pitot and static systems each have a reservoir and control valve to introduce and regulate pressure changes. Each side has a vent valve to relieve pressure. On each side of the test set is a ventilation plug covering the reservoir inlets. They are to remain intact throughout the life of the tester and are not to be replaced with solid sealing plugs. The outlet connections to the aircraft are located in the top center of the tester. These fittings are 1/8 national pipe thread. Your hose kit comes with the fittings necessary to connect the hoses to the test set. A cross-bleed valve is also located in the center of the tester. This valve ties the pitot and static systems together and allows them to run as one system. The cross-bleed valve is important for proper and safe operation of the system and provides maximum flexibility. The tester has calibration cards installed to provide for exact measuring of sensitive components. Now we'll put the tester to use. The first step is to make sure all valves are fully closed by turning them clockwise. Then, cap and seal both outlet ports. Turn on the internal pump switch, or use hand pumps, and pump the pressure tank reservoir to at least 15 psi, as indicated by the pressure tank gauge. Turn on the internal pump, or use hand pumps, to increase the vacuum in the vacuum tank to 25 inches. Release pressure to the pitot system by opening the pressure control and observe that the indicated airspeed increases. Close the valve and observe for leaks. Now, open the pressure vent. As the pressure vent opens, the airspeed returns to rest. Then close the pressure vent. Next, open the vacuum control valve. As the vacuum control opens, the tester draws a vacuum on the static system. The altitude indication increases and the indicated airspeed increases. This increase shows there is differential pressure inside the airspeed indicator case. This differential is created by reducing case pressure, not by increasing diaphragm pressure. Eliminating this pressure differential will return the airspeed indicator to rest. But opening the pressure vent actually increases the differential. The only way to eliminate the differential and maintain altitude is to bleed the two systems together using the cross-bleed valve. Open the cross-bleed valve and allow the pitot and static systems to bleed together. Then, vent the systems through the pressure vent with the cross-bleed fully open, because this prevents damage to the airspeed indicator by maintaining a slight positive pressure. These examples were conducted entirely within the closed system of the test set, with both external ports capped. The complete pre-test procedure is displayed on the top left face of the test set. The tests performed on the aircraft using the pitot-static test set fall into three categories: airspeed, pitot-only control; altitude, static-only control; and total system integration. To begin your testing, it is necessary to configure the tester properly. Begin by closing all the valves on the tester. Turn on the internal pump switch, or use hand pumps, and pump the pressure tank reservoir to at least 15 psi, as indicated by the pressure tank gauge. Turn on the internal pump, or use hand pumps, to increase the vacuum in the vacuum tank to 25 inches. To successfully use the cross-bleed on the aircraft system, connect both the pitot head and static port to the test set. This is a good practice during any pitot or static testing because it allows you to have immediate control of any instrument in the system. Attach the flared end hoses to the tester with the two adapter fittings supplied with the tester. Airspeed control, pitot testing, requires pressurizing the diaphragm of the airspeed indicator. This allows you to check indicator calibration for pitot head or system leaks and for airspeed diaphragm leaks. Accomplish the preliminary setup procedure as previously detailed to ensure proper tester configuration. Next, release pressure into the system using the pressure control valve until desired airspeed is obtained. Once the testing is completed, open the pressure vent valve and return airspeed to ambient. The altitude-only control test is useful to check altimeter calibration, climb indicator calibration, static port or system leaks, and case leaks in the altimeter or vertical speed indicator. To operate the test set properly, it must be connected to both the pitot and static systems. This allows you to check altitude without harming the airspeed indicator. Accomplish the preliminary setup procedure as previously detailed to ensure proper tester configuration. Begin testing by opening the cross-bleed valve. Then open the vacuum control to draw a vacuum until the system reaches the desired test point. Notice that the airspeed indicator remains at rest throughout the test. Upon reaching the desired altitude, close all valves and check for leaks. A rise in airspeed when you close the cross-bleed valve indicates a leak in the pitot side of the system. A loss in altitude when you close the cross-bleed valve indicates a leak in the static side of the system. Conclude the test by opening the cross-bleed fully. Then open the pressure vent valve to return the system to ambient. The total system integration test accomplishes a full system checkout, or tests components that require combined input, such as the air data computer, airspeed switch, Mach meter, or Mach switch. This testing procedure requires you to test both the pitot and static systems simultaneously. The aircraft or component must have both pitot and static ports hooked up so as to provide positive control to the entire system. Accomplish the preliminary setup procedure as previously detailed to ensure proper tester configuration. Next, open the cross-bleed valve by turning the valve fully counterclockwise. To show the sequence, we'll test a flight data recorder to a series of test points. The first test point is 250 knots at 5,000 feet. First, establish the altitude parameter. Remember that the cross-bleed valve is fully open. Then open the vacuum control to draw vacuum on the system until the altimeter indicates 5,000 feet. Now, close the cross-bleed valve. This isolates the pitot and static systems, which allows the instruments to operate as they do aboard the airplane in flight. Open the pressure control valve to pressurize the pitot system until the airspeed indicator reaches the desired airspeed. Once the airspeed reaches 250 knots, the first test point is established. When your test set is in current calibration, the aircraft component should show correct readings. With the first test point achieved, open the vacuum control to increase the vacuum in the static system and drive the altimeter to its next test point, 300 knots at 10,000 feet. Now look at the airspeed indicator. If you need to decrease the airspeed to arrive at 300 knots, open the cross-bleed valve. To increase the airspeed, open the pressure control valve. After you evaluate all the test points, open the cross-bleed valve to return the airspeed to rest. Then open the pressure vent and return the system to ambient pressure. As mentioned earlier, this maintains positive pressure, preventing damage to the airspeed indicator diaphragm. You can use the 1811 to test an engine pressure ratio transmitter by using the above procedure combined with the following. First, connect the pressure port to PT7, high port of the EPR unit, and connect the vacuum port to PT2, low port of the EPR unit. The test points are referenced in your aircraft maintenance manual or in our instructional manual. This chart shows some of the common test points with their equivalent airspeed and altitude settings. Last, we'll test the manifold pressure gauge. Accomplish the preliminary setup procedure as previously detailed to ensure proper tester configuration. To begin the test, plug or cap the pressure port. Then connect the vacuum port to the manifold gauge you are testing. Next, open the crossbleed fully. Verify the altimeter is set to 29.92 inches of mercury. Refer to the chart in your maintenance manual or our tester manual for the equivalent altitude settings. For tests below field elevation, open the pressure control to simulate lower altitude. For test points above current altitude, open the vacuum control to achieve the higher altitude. Use these two steps to evaluate all the necessary test points. To end the test and return the system to ambient pressure, open the pressure vent. Our program has taken you through the system and its components with their various testing procedures. As with any critical calibration, make sure your test set calibration is current and accurate. Barfield recommends that our pitot test sets be recertified at least once a year. Thank you for your attention during this tape. We at Barfield feel that aviation safety is promoted best through proper and consistent training on components and systems.